Let's go.
Party rock is in the house tonight. Everybody just have a good time.
Yeah.
And we gon' make you lose your mind. Everybody just have a good time.
Clap.
Party rock is in the house tonight.
Good evening, everyone. So right now I'm studying first year medicine at James Cook University. So if you haven't heard of that, that's in Townsville in North Queensland. And you know, as Wissam said, I graduated from high school 2 years ago, and I was a student here at Alpha Omega right from the end of year 10 right through to the end of year 12. And I remember being where you are now, 3 or 4 years ago, and I was in year 10. I was going through the motions, just living day to day, week to week, doing my homework, doing my assignments. But I hadn't really thought too much about the future. So that all started to change when I came to Alpha Omega. So I joined up in Stephen's maths class, and it was really Stephen who first started talking to me about what did I envisage myself doing for the rest of my life. So I remember that very first lesson with Stephen. We were doing like some sort of functions test, but he didn't make me do the test because that was my first lesson. So instead he talked to me for a very long time. He talked to me for about half an hour while the rest of the class was doing the test, and we talked about everything. He talked to me about what subjects was I going to choose in year 11 and 12. He talked to me about what sorts of marks was I looking to get, and of course he talked to me about what was I looking to do once I graduated high school and in university. So I told him I hadn't really thought too much about it. So he started talking to me about medicine, as he does with a lot of his students, and the advice he gave me, which I'll give to you guys, is he told me to go out and talk to as many people as I could. He told me to talk to people who are who are either medical students or doctors themselves. He told me to go out and get as much advice as I possibly could from them. Ask them what is it like to be a doctor. What does the day-to-day work of a doctor involve? And of course, how do you get there? How do you get to that point? So I did exactly that. I went and talked to family members. I talked to my aunt, who's been a doctor in a country town in New South Wales for over 30 years now. And from what I learned from her was that there's an enormous amount of sacrifice involved in going down that line of work, but it is also very, very rewarding at the same time. I did work experience, so I volunteered at Auburn Hospital. And I also did some volunteer work with Meals on Wheels. And what I learned from that, just from that sort of first initial exposure, was that I actually really enjoyed the environment that doctors worked in. I enjoyed being able to just talk to a variety of people on a day-to-day basis, interact with a lot of people, and I enjoyed helping them, or hopefully one day helping them solve their problems. And I also started, doing preparation for the UMAT. And all this was happening around year 10, year 11. So, I sort of got the ball rolling then. And, that's what I'd tell you guys now. You're in year 10 or year 11. You've got a lot of time on your hands. So get out there and, start talking to people who are experts in their field. Even if you've got no idea what you want to do, just pick a field, go talk to family members or friends or people who you know. Start talking to them and start experiencing. Go out and do work experience. Go out and do volunteer work. Start experiencing what is it like, to be, that career, to be a lawyer, a doctor, or what have you. So I've written here. You can see make your own UAT guide, and that huge, really thick UAT guide you get. Your schools will hand out to you. I found that pretty useless because it's just got a whole bunch of courses and the cutoff mark, and just a brief description of what each person does. So, I didn't find that very useful. So that's why I said just make your own sort of guide from your own sort of experiences, from talking to people, from going out in different workplaces. Just experience it for yourself firsthand. And I think you'll get a much better of an idea of, what it is you want to do. The other, of course, the other huge important consideration you have to make when even beginning to think about, what career it is you want to do, is you have to get to know yourself really, really well as a person. So this requires obviously a great deal of introspection. you've got to know what it is you like. So personally, I found I'd always enjoyed, maths and science and those sorts of subjects at school. So I imagined myself doing something along those lines. And also job satisfaction is another huge consideration. I see in my family, people who in my family, the family members in my family, who've got the jobs where you're just sort of behind a desk all day. They get nowhere near as much satisfaction out of the work they do compared to those people, who are, out and about and, either working outdoors or, interacting with a wide variety of people every day. So you've got to know yourself as a person. What do you like doing? Do you like problem solving? Do you like maths? Do you like science? The other thing I knew about myself was I was someone who enjoyed learning every day. I've always loved learning from day one, and I could imagine myself doing something where I was constantly growing, constantly adding to my skill set. So, obviously, as a medical student or as a doctor, you never stop learning from the day you're a student to the day you retire. You're always learning something. So that's something that I found fit in really well with my own personality. And again, you've got to find out is that the sort of person you are, because I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. So, yeah. And yeah, just realizing these things sort of really cemented my decision to sort of pursue medicine, as a career choice. And it really strengthened my decision. And so what you guys have to do is just, sort of have this internal conversation with yourself. Just think to yourself, what do I like? What do I want out of life? Where do I see myself? Do I see myself working outdoors? Do I see myself working with kids? Do I see myself working behind a desk? What do you imagine yourself doing? Okay, and this requires a great deal of thought. It's not something you can just sort of, not something most people can sort of just come up with just like that. And just getting back to the topic of tonight and the topic of my talk is, do you actually need to know? And from my experience, look, the short answer is no, you don't. But from my experience, I found that it helped so much. It gave me so much motivation, so much drive in the HSC just to get through that year. It really, just having that goal, that sort of light at the end of the tunnel, that goal in mind, that this was the destination I wanted to be at. That gave me so much motivation to keep going in year 12. And in high school, year 7 to 10, it's all fun and games. It's great. But by the time year 11 and 12 comes around, it's a whole different story. I found myself at times, I was very unmotivated. And it was a thought that this could be my best shot. This could be my best chance of getting into medicine, of doing my dream job, of doing my dream career. That's what drove me to do all the little things, like going to the library at recess and lunchtime, instead of wasting time, making idle chit chat, with people you're never going to talk to after high school, or just waking up that extra hour early, sacrificing that 1 hour of sleep to do your 4 unit or whatever it is. Okay, so just to do those little tiny things, it all adds up in the end. And I convinced myself, and I believed in myself, that it would add up, that it would pay off. But at the same time, I knew people in high school who, they didn't really have, a great sort of, they didn't really have that sort of direction. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. And I knew people like that who didn't do so well in the HSC and people who did fantastically well. So don't think that just because, even after you do all your research and go out and talk to people and do your work experience, and you still think to yourself, you know what, I still don't think I'm quite ready to make a decision. You shouldn't think that's a bad thing, because I actually think there is some sort of maturity associated with that. I think that, to be able to say to yourself, you know what, I've done my research, but I'm not going to rush into something and just make a decision hastily just because everyone else around me is. I think there is a great deal of maturity associated with that, and I think you can still do really well. And I know people who did really well in high school, even though they had only a very general or vague idea of what they wanted to do in year 12, and they're doing really well in university now. So my advice to you would be, if you're in that situation where you've done your research, you've talked to lots of people, and you're still not sure what you want to do, my advice to you would be, just don't forget that everything you're doing now and everything you end up doing in the next 2 years, in year 11 and in year 12, it's all going to count. It's all going to pay off. And the better you do now, the more work you put in now, the higher your marks are now. Obviously, the more doors, the more opportunities you're opening up for yourself in the future. So don't forget that if you're in that sort of situation, and use that as your motivation. And then the worst thing that I thought could have happened. I didn't make medicine, okay? And I was absolutely shattered. I still remember it. It was the day our UMAT results came out. I didn't do very well on that exam. And it was just the day right before high school graduation. And, I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. Like, I just thought my dream had shattered then. And it was very, very difficult pill to swallow. It was not at all easy to take. But I did have a backup plan. So this is the one thing about, if you do make up your mind on something that, this is what I want to do, you do have to realize that, life doesn't go exactly 100% the way we want it to. So you've got to compensate for that. You've got to have a backup ready. And that's what I did. So I did a year of actuarial studies at Macquarie University. Because as I said, I'd always enjoyed maths at school. So I thought, what, this wouldn't be the worst course in the world to do. And, it was tough. And at the end of that year, I'd found that it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. It was a very dry subject for the most part. But I kept going because I knew that I would always keep trying out for medicine. It was my dream, and I knew I'd never give up on it because I knew 30, 40 years down the track, whatever I'd be doing, if I look back, on that sort of initial period of my life, and, I thought to myself, what would it have been like if I had tried again? What would it have been like if I had given it another shot? So I didn't want to be that person 40 years down the track, thinking, what if I had done it again? What if I had tried again? And to me, I couldn't bear the thought of that. So I was determined to keep trying again and again, as many times as it took. As many times as it took to finally get there. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you guys is that, a lot of success stories, they do begin as failures. One of my favorite athletes, Michael Jordan, he failed to make his high school basketball team. We're not even talking about college or, professional leagues. We're talking about high school. And when he reflects on that experience, he says that gave him so much drive, like that gave him so much motivation to prove that coach wrong who dropped him from that team. And in his Hall of Fame speech, he actually says, I wanted to make sure you understood that you made a mistake, dude. And he says it straight up. Yeah, so it gave him so much drive. It just ignited this fire within him. And later on he says, and you might have even heard this quote in his Air Jordan ads. He says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So guys, what I want you guys to take out of this is that, look, life won't always go according to how we want it to, okay? It's just not going to happen. It'd be great if it did, but that's not the reality. But there's no point in just giving up that easily. Because I know so many people in high school, they said, I want this, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, engineer, right? And they gave up so easily. They didn't make it the first go, and they gave up. Saying I want and actually doing it are two very, very different things. So make sure you realize the difference between those two. I guess I feel like I'm back where you guys are now, because now that I'm in the first year of a 6-year course, I kind of feel like I'm all the way back at the beginning, because when I tell people I'm doing medicine, the very next thing they ask me is, what do you want to do? Do you want to be a GP? Do you want to be a specialist? Etc. And the honest answer is, I actually don't know, okay? Because it's a long, I've still got a lot to learn before I can start making an informed decision. So, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing I just told you guys. I'm going to go out and talk to people who are much more experienced and much more knowledgeable than myself. I'm going to go out and gain a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. And only then can I start to think about making a decision. Okay, so I feel like I'm at the beginning again in a way. I feel like I'm back in year 7 as well. Okay, so that would be my advice to you guys. You guys have the time now, okay? Like I said, in year 12, you're not going to get this time. So make the most of it now. And, get out there, start talking to people, start talking to your family members or friends or whoever, and, start trying to establish some sort of a framework as to where do you see yourself going? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I know it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to ask. You guys are what, 15 to 17 years old, something like that. It's a very difficult thing to say to someone who's that old. Tell me what you're going to do for the next 40 years of your life. It's not an easy thing to ask someone. But what I would say, but the fact that you guys are here tonight, it just shows that you guys are serious about this. That you guys actually are willing to, look inside yourself and see, where do I see myself going? So, yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say tonight. So, thanks a lot for listening, and I really hope you guys got something out of it. And yeah.